Ladies and gentlemen, with the arrival of Chairman Hawkins, we have now reached a quorum. Welcome to the Regulated Industries Full Committee. And Chairman Powell is busy with elections integrity, and so he has asked me to chair the meeting. So we welcome all of you here. We have one bill today, Senate Bill 236 by Senator Brass. This bill has not been to subcommittee, so we are going to take testimony today in full committee, which we don't normally do. But we'll invite Senator Brass to present his bill.
Bill 236, and simply this bill is really modeled after the Merlot to Go language that we did, and what we've done, through the pandemic, restaurants were really devastated along with several other industries, but our hospitality industry was hit very, very hard. So one thing that they've requested, the association came to me with a request, just trying to help out, anything we can do to help out restaurants. And they had great success during the pandemic with beer and wine to go. And so they simply requested that they be able to do mixed drinks to go as well. So what we've done in this bill is we are allowing that. We, again, have modeled the language after the Merlot to Go so that we can avoid any kind of open container type issues. It has to be in a sealed container, cannot have a straw hole in that container, has to go either in a locked glove box behind the third row or in the trunk. So that's how we're going to avoid the open container issues. There will be a sign or a time stamped receipt along with that. That way we ensure that it was made that day. We're not simply allowing, them to mix up a bunch of, hurricanes and start shipping them out the door. That's not what this is about. This is simply just, if you order, say, Mexican food online and you want to get a margarita to go, you can do that. It does have to, we've maxed it out at 2 drinks per entree. And then we've clearly defined what a mixed drink is. We've simply said that it's 3 ounces of alcohol with any kind of non-alcoholic beverage mixed with it. So that's really what it does. Again, it's haven't had a whole lot of pushback on this, just some concerns around the open container piece. But I think we've clearly defined and avoided any situation to where that could happen. I mean, if they're going to open container, they're going to open container, whether it's a mixed drink or not. So that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. We do have a couple of questions. Who is number 6? Is that?
I was a little confused. What's this have to do with meteorology? You said something about a hurricane. I didn't.
I don't even know how to answer that.
No. Who is number 9?
That would be me. Senator, we sure appreciate you bringing this bill. As a fellow restaurateur, I understand the hardships that our industry has faced through this pandemic. And this is just, we talk all the time about another tool in the toolbox when we work on things around here for government and other people to use. And I think this just gives restaurants another tool in the toolbox to get back to profitability and knowing that, there's a lot of profitability in alcohol. This gives us a chance to be able to do this. And I appreciate you bringing the bill. And just for the record, I don't sell liquor by the drink, so this will not affect me. So I won't have to choke us out or Montahan out or whatever you want to call it.
Well, as my house sponsor, I appreciate you, your kind words. And I'll tell you, like I told him on the Senate floor, the tool we're going to provide here is a screwdriver, and that screwdriver's to go. It was a lot funnier when I said it in the Senate. I understand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Brass, in all seriousness, as I recall, the way it was before I got here, but the Merlot to Go bill was basically the portion of an unconsumed bottle of wine. Mm-hmm. Theory being that you didn't want to have a customer experience the loss of the value. They paid the money for a bottle of wine. You didn't want to encourage them to drink it. You were encouraging them to cap it and cork it and seal it and let them take it home for later consumption. That really was a public safety measure to keep people from doing what I just described. This appears to be different to me as far as, and I fully support our restaurant association in every means we can. In fact, your Senate colleagues passed House Bill 149 today that should be able to have a big benefit when restaurants do return to profitability on their taxes. Many of them are organized as pass-through entities. But you mentioned that during the pandemic, there was a relaxation of beer and wine. Were they limited to 2 drinks each for transport, or?
I don't believe so.
So
Not
they
that
could
I'm
take
aware
as
of.
much as they wanted?
I honestly, I don't know the answer to
And
that.
I'm not,
Yeah.
I just was.
Yeah, and but to your point, you talk about they didn't want to have the loss of value, so you'd find them, they'd want to go ahead and finish that bottle, say at the restaurant, and we were wanting them to, feel like they could take it home, and so you're essentially having less drinking and driving, or at least less alcohol in the system when they're driving home. To me, this kind of does fall in that same sense. Is if if you're going to have a couple drinks at a restaurant, or really even at home, for me, once about two to three is about right where I want to be. Well, if I can have one at the restaurant and then have my other 2 at home, I would feel much safer doing that than I would sitting there having 2 or 3 at the restaurant. So it kind of does go along. I completely understand where you're coming from, but to me, if we're going to encourage people to drink and not get behind the wheel of a car, to me, this allows them the ability to go have those final 2 drinks at home rather than sit at the restaurant.
To follow-up question, if I may, and thank you for explaining that.
Yes, sir.
Because is my understanding, though, this is not just limited to people that are in dining only. This people can call up and get a meal to go with 2 drinks to go. Is that not correct?
Correct. Now, what we have done is we're not allowing like DoorDash or Uber, any of your delivery services. They cannot deliver the drinks themselves. And that's more, there's some liability issues. And until that gets worked out, we're just going to keep it clean, and whoever's ordering the drinks will need to go get them themselves.
I guess, obviously the concern is somebody pop the lid as soon as they get in there, especially if they've already, like you said, had a drink in the restaurant already. Is there any consideration of limiting just like 1 drink, like 1 margarita with a Mexican food to go? Or
I'm sure somebody considered that. I didn't. No, sir.
would you be interested? Would you be amenable to a friendly amendment to just take it from 2 to 1?
I mean, this bill's obviously in the House, and I don't really have control of that. I don't think that would help our restaurants if we go down to 1 drink. And I mean, the same concern that you have over 1 drink, over 2 drinks, is going to be that same concern. I mean, if they're going to pop the top in the car, they're going to pop the top. Just like if it's a bottle of Merlot with a cork, they're going to simply, if they really want to drink the drink in the car, they're going to do it. And I don't know that we're going to be able to legislate that in this bill, and taking it from 2 to 1. I don't know that is legislating that. All we're doing there is saying, you're only going to be able to chug 1 drink in the car instead of 2. And I just don't know that that's going to be much help for our restaurants.
Well,
So,
thank
but
you for-
I certainly respect the process. And if that's your, that's your will, there's nothing, I don't have a vote, so there's nothing I can do now.
Thank you for explaining the bill.
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Chairman Hawkins for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for bringing the bell. I see Karen Bremer out there. It's good to see you again. I'd like to speak to that. A really good friend of mine in Gainesville owns Juan Luna, and it's been a real tough time on him. Anybody that would order a drink to go with their dinner is going to order a mixed drink that they typically cannot make at home. I mean, if you're a scotch and soda guy, you can do that at home, a bourbon guy, but margaritas or a lot of the cocktails. And that's the reason that they would order that with their dinner. And if it's only 1, they might miss out on some dinners. I mean, they've been hanging on by a thread. And I think if we can allow them to do 2 drinks to go or cocktails, I think it's something that we ought to do. So,
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. One thing we've seen a rise in is what's known as craft drinks or craft mixed drinks, and
Right.
it's just these drinks that you can only get at a certain restaurant or you can only get at a certain place, and certainly this could help those types of places out as well.
and to my colleague down there, Jay, 3 ounces of a hurricane would be 3-ounce drink. That's all liquor, which I bet you know.
Representative Walensky, for a question.
I waive. I've
You waive?
learned everything I need to.
Representative Carpenter, I believe, number 9.
Yes, sir. I was just going to reiterate what Chairman Hawkins said. You know, this is a deal where your wife really loves the margarita down here at this corner Mexican restaurant, but she's not quite comfortable going in there and eating. And so it's Friday night, and what do? You eat what, and you get whatever your wife really, really wants. So you go down there and you get your 2 margaritas to go. And I think it's a good bill. And I think not only protection, it's a consumer. For me as a consumer, I want to have this option as well. So I think it's both.
Well, and I'll add to that. I was talking to a buddy of mine just yesterday, and his wife made the comment, they always have Taco Tuesday. Well, they always go to a local Mexican restaurant and have tacos, and she loves the margaritas. So they have their margaritas there, and now she's able to go get the food, get the margaritas, and go home, and she doesn't have to sit there and listen to the karaoke on Taco Tuesday.
Chair recognizes Chairman Jasper.
If you heard it, you'd know it was.
Thank you, Senator. Just a question, line 2930. I just want to read this. This looks to me like this really does empower local control if they determine they did not want to allow this. Does this give a local authority that they can prohibit this?
It's
I'm not a lawyer.
unless
so-
otherwise prohibited by. Yeah, I mean they could basically they would have to opt out instead of a opt in. We're by law making it to where they can opt out of this. If they don't want to do it, they can do it with local resolution or ordinance.
Okay,
Is the
thank you.
way is my understanding, and I think that's right.
Okay, thank you.
That's right.
Chair recognizes Representative Earhart.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Thank you for bringing this bill.
Yes,
I'm a
ma'am.
little curious about what a tamper evident to-go container that has no openings or straw holes might look like. I mean, I'm trying to imagine things that I've gotten to-go drinks where everything has a straw hole. Is this going to be something that the restaurants are going to have to
Yes.
invest in?
Sure, and I mean, yeah, I mean you got milk jugs with no straw holes that could be potentially used. Karen actually brought in a Tupperware. If you think of a Tupperware,
Yeah.
it might be in something like that. But again, you've got to figure out a way to seal it.
Right,
If
but
you
of course,
go,
with the limit of 2 drinks, would that, I'd like if I wanted a basil gimlet to go from Blue Ridge Grill, I'd have a jug or.
possibly yes, you could have up to 6 ounces. That would be 2 drinks
Okay.
in your milk jug. Or also think about if you've gone into like a growler place. Typically they have like a glass jar, or my local growler, they fill up a glass jar, they screw the top on, and then they actually have a little piece of plastic they put on it, and with a hair dryer they seal it up. And so it could be something potentially like that.
I understand. Thank you.
Representative Carpenter. All right, we have some testimony before we be ready for that. Any other questions?
I appreciate
of
your
the senator?
enthusiasm.
Any other questions of the senator from the committee? We have 3 people who are signed up to speak. The first one is Mike Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Mike Griffin. I'm Public Affairs Representative with Georgia Baptist Mission Board. And we do have a lot of respect for Senator Brass. I appreciate him. Very good person. He's actually written, what am I trying to say? He read some of my opposition to one of his bills for me one time. He's so nice, he'll actually oppose his own bill for me. But anyway, seriously, I do appreciate him, and this has nothing to do with him. Absolutely not. But as Georgia Baptist, we simply, as a matter of principle, oppose any loosening of restrictions on alcohol. That's just basically our position. And I have worked on a couple of alcohol bills already this year that I realized that there were some minimum things that we did need to work with and help. So I am also willing to work as well. But I've been now here 14 years. I've been in Georgia for 60 years. I pastored for 35 and a half years. So I've worked a lot with people. And I can just go ahead and tell you, and I've had substance abuse organization affirm what I'm fixing to say to you, and I never had any scientific study other than just being alive. And that is, number one, accessibility equals sales when it comes to alcohol. Sales equals consumption. Consumption equals the potential, not always, but it does equal the potential of problems related to alcohol. Let's just be honest with one another. This is about money. And sometimes we joke a little bit too much about that this is so benign and innocent that we're not having any problems in our state with alcohol. I've got a fact sheet, I could go over and talk about what the problem is. The Washington Post had a headline a few years ago entitled, "Alcohol is the deadliest drug in the United States, and it's not even close." And so my point is, no one involved in the industry is ever for any regulations that's not going to help them make more money. And that in and of itself is not a wrong thing, by the way. But I'm just saying we cannot let the end always justify the means on these types of things. And we have been through a pandemic, Lord willing, through one, but now we're going to establish something that's going to go forward that I don't think is going to be needed even under the justification that's being given us here. Again, we're just concerned about accessibility equal more sales, sales equal more consumption, and all the problems. And I've dealt with legislation. There are two things that are very important about legislation. First of all, is it a good bill? And then the second thing is, can you enforce the bill? And I've seen a lot of good legislation that for all practical purposes, there was not a lot of inertia to try to really enforce it. And I can see this as being a hard enforcing bill when it comes down to getting very granular with it and trying to figure out how to deal with it. Again, whatever the percentage or the increase it is, the more availability and accessibility to alcohol gets out here, no matter where it is, you're going to increase whatever the liability possibilities are. You're not minimizing it. You're actually maximizing it by doing that. So we cannot speak in favor of this legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Reverend Griffin.
You're welcome.
Do we have a question? Yeah, I'm sorry, it's waived.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Karen Bremer from the Georgia Restaurant Association.
Mr. Chairman, representatives, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'll try to keep my comments brief as we have a restaurateur here to speak. And I'm not going to belabor the point on how devastated our industry has been. We have over 110,000 restaurants closed now in the United States. The restaurant industry lost about $300 billion in revenue, $5 billion alone here in Georgia, and we still have close to 100,000 workers that are not working at this time. This bill, as the senator presented, is something to enable full-service restaurants that are being limited right now by the 6-foot distancing. There are many small restaurants in the state that can't reopen right now except for delivery and carryout. I was very successful at speaking to municipalities and counties all over the state to pass the beer and wine to go, but in fact, many of them wanted to pass mixed drinks to go, but we had to make them aware, and DOR made them aware that we needed to pass it here on a state basis to allow for that. And then one concern I'd like to address about safety, the Georgia Restaurant Association, since I've been at the association for 10 years, I have lobbied significantly with municipal and county governments to include alcohol safety training in their local ordinances, because I feel that's more important than a background check. We want to make sure that people know it's illegal to serve somebody under 21, and it is illegal to serve somebody that has overconsumed. I represent one of the largest alcohol safety training programs in the United States, Serve Safe Alcohol. And this has always been part of what we do and how we do it. And as a matter of fact, I gave way over $1 million worth of training to restaurant workers last year during COVID. And so anyhow, please, we ask that you pass this on behalf of the industry and would appreciate y'all's consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Bremer. Any questions? We do have one, Secretary Williamson.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Bremer. Just educate me, how much beer and wine can leave on this to-go sales now? Is there a limit on that?
I don't believe so. I don't remember. Maybe somebody from our legal department could tell us that, or somebody from the beer department. I don't believe that there is a quantity limitation. Where this idea of 2 drinks per entree, 33 other states have passed this, and we had legal counsel look at all the other pieces of legislation that have passed around the United States, and this is actually in line with what other states have done. Actually, other states have done larger quantities of alcohol, 4.5 ounces of alcohol per drink. And
Because that's, I've always heard them call an ounce and a half is a quote jigger, right?
correct.
Normally, back in the day, I thought an ounce and a half was the typical average amount of alcohol. So this is effectively 2 jiggers. So it's pretty strong drink, just one. But,
Yeah.
but
Well, the specialty drinks that you consume in restaurants that are in the martini glasses, those are usually 5 ounces of alcohol. That's a standard pour for a martini nowadays. It's changed over the years.
thank you.
Thank you, Representative Carpenter.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Ms. Karen. And I can ask the next speaker as well, but really this is, to me, granted, I listened to what Reverend Griffin talked about, hopefully we're through this pandemic, but I think what we've seen from this pandemic is that customers' patterns have changed, and that's not going to change after the pandemic. Yes, some people will go to restaurants, but I think that what we've seen is an opportunity to allow restaurateurs to bend their knees and react to certain market conditions that may not ever come fully back. And so I think that's what this bill does, is allow us to be creative and continue to figure out revenue streams for restaurants in an ever-changing market.
Agreed. In all the recent surveys, 30% of restaurant customers say they will never go back to a restaurant again. So.
All right, seeing no other questions, thank you, Ms. Bremer.
Thank you very much.
And we have Mr. Alan LeBlanc, is that right?
Yes, sir. Excuse me. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman and representatives. I'm Alan LeBlanc. My wife and I own Brew to Serve, Inc. We own 3 restaurants in the city of Atlanta. One is our oldest, established in 1998, is Max Lager's Wood-Fired Grill and Brewery on Peachtree Street downtown. We opened in 2012 White Oak Kitchen and Cocktails across from the Hyatt Regency, which is a cocktail-oriented restaurant. And we just recently, in December 2019, opened Bold Monk Brewing Company on the Upper West Side by Topgolf. I wanted to thank all the hard work that everybody's done, including the Georgia Restaurant Association. And I appreciate all the concerns that people have with regards to liquor passing out our front door, as we've been dealing with alcohol usage in our restaurants for many decades. I see this bill as very much supportive of independent restaurants. Independent restaurants are the ones that have been faring the most difficultly this during the pandemic. Chain restaurants have adapted in the to-go, et cetera. I have one restaurant that's still closed, Max Lager's Wood-Fired Grill and Brewery, which has been closed for a little over a year. White Oak Kitchen and Cocktails, we reopened in August to the merchandise marts, as we see ourselves as a service to the community, and have maintained its operation, though we lose money every week. Our most recent restaurant, Bold Monk Brewing Company, we reopened in May and gradually established that business once again. And at this stage is our most profitable restaurant and doing quite well. So appreciate that. Chairman, Hawkins, I would really like to reiterate what you were saying, is that it is an experience-related activity on this Cocktails to Go. If somebody really wants to drink, they're not going to order a cocktail from one of our restaurants. It's very expensive. It's not cheap. And the experience of having a dinner from a restaurant like White Oak Kitchen and Cocktails is, the food's not cheap either. I don't own a Mexican restaurant, so it's not going to be the margaritas for me. It's going to be, a nice short rib with a cocktail, or, a nice piece of fish. And those two drinks, or that drink, is part of the incentive to order a complete experience from my independent restaurant. Because every other opportunity is going to be given to a Chipotle, a Shake Shack, or something like that, which is just going to bring, sustenance for dinner, just chow it down and then watch Netflix. But if they're ordering something from my restaurant, it's a little different. And I think a lot of independent restaurants operate with that type of, experiential programming. And if 30%, frankly, Karen, you have me a little concerned, if 30% of the people aren't going to go back to a restaurant, that's we're looking forward to a challenging time. Containers, to address the containers thing, I was doing some research because I don't do a lot of this in my restaurants. I do sell beer out of my brewery in cans, my brew pub, Bull Monk Brewing Company. I went online, and there's all kinds of industries that have been created around the needs of the restaurants and other people doing business during the pandemic or in this environment. And there's all kinds of sealable containers, dated stickers. Just go on Amazon and you can find containers. In terms of enforcement, we're a family-run business, and a lot of restaurateurs, outside the corporate chains, et cetera, are family-run businesses. We operate day to day to day with a total commitment towards working within the framework of city legislation, state legislation, federal legislation, and the health department regulations. We don't cut corners. We don't live on the razor's edge. We live in fear of being closed down for any one of violations, known or unknown. And I think the restaurant industry has shown our commitment and our ability to abide by the rules and regulations that have been established by your body and other governmental entities. So I appreciate your consideration. Hopefully we can put another quiver in our arsenal to maintain our sustainability within the environment and in the future, and appreciate your consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. LeBlanc, and thank you for your courage and tenacity and hanging in through these very difficult times. You and all our other restaurant operators. I know it's been difficult. I've actually eaten at the White Oaks restaurant a few years ago one time when I was in a meeting downtown Atlanta. Thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you very much.
We have some folks watching in online in Zoom land. Do any of them want to comment or to speak? Yes, sir.
Could I ask a question before you sit down? I'll apologize. And if you don't want to answer this, that's fine. But I'm trying to help understand some things. With the pandemic, that's one issue. But with the amount of violence that we saw in downtown Atlanta back in the summer, did that affect your business at all?
Downtown is a different animal right now in terms of what we're facing in the future. We're very active in the community, and within our, obviously, two of my restaurants are right across the street,
Right.
opposite ends of the park, and we've been dealing with that situation for over 2 decades.
Right.
It has, I mean, I've never seen gunshots like we've had before. Several months, it seems to have quieted down. I mean, literally, we had guests in our restaurant when gunfire, took place on the corner, and I had a guest from Chicago that, rallied all my guests in the restaurant, said, "Get behind the bar." We don't know how to deal with that really here in Atlanta. The unrest was short-lived, and we were blessed in the fact that with all the windows that were broken, our two restaurants just seemed to, the boulder was 3 feet away. I guess it was too heavy. But our office building 270 had many windows broken.
So I guess what I was saying is you're trying to overcome two obstacles at this
We're
time.
we're going to be facing, and the drinks to go would really, I think, those restaurants are geared towards the Hyatts, the
Right.
Marriotts, the
Right.
Westin, Peachtree Plaza, which are all right across the street. We're looking at a 2% occupancy right now, or population for SunTrust Plaza, 2 to 5% people working there right now, which are key to the downtown restaurants. Peachtree, that's the other thing about people coming down. I've spoken with the president of Georgia Pacific, and when that all got boarded up and they started bringing people back, it was like, well, there's not much to come back to. And that's why we're open at White Oak.
Right.
That's why we stayed open since August. We little restaurateurs are asked to bear a large burden. We're on the street level. We're on the sidewalks. We're the ones that are open, trying to bring activity. Because I say, if if Denton's has a board meeting up in their office space at SunTrust Plaza and looks out and says, "Should we bring our people back?" and everything's closed, there's no momentum on a physics basis. So we've been asked to do that. Well, we're not really asked, but as I said, we've been downtown for 2 decades, and that's the role we see ourselves playing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Collins, for the questions, and thank you, Mr. LeBlanc. We do have someone from Zoom land, Charlotte Spell. Ms. Spell?
Yes, thank you. I'm concerned that our state is seeking yet another way to expand the availability of alcohol, especially distilled spirits, which have traditionally been treated with more regulatory restrictions. Binge drinking among women is up 41% since COVID hit in March of 2020. No doubt women who are responsible for caring for children account for some of these. Nielsen data from March of last year showed a 54% increase in alcohol sales and a 524% increase in online alcohol sales. It is obvious that people are turning to alcohol, a potentially harmful and addictive substance, to deal with the stress and anxiety that comes with a pandemic. And I fear that this bill would enable people to do that even more. And I think that I understand this correctly. It's my understanding that through this bill, a patron may purchase up to 2 drinks, with each having up to 3 ounces of distilled spirits, for a potential consumption of 6 ounces of distilled spirits. I have 19 years experience teaching Prime for Life, which is a research-based drug education and risk reduction program. It is the curriculum that's used in our Georgia DUI schools. A critical component of this program is to educate participants on the definition of a standard drink based on how our body reacts to the alcohol and how we process the alcohol. So when a person says, if that blue light pops on and you get pulled over and the officer says, "Well, have you been drinking?" And you said, "Yes, sir." "Well, how many have you had?" "A couple." Well, if we leave that up to the individual discretion, a couple may be a total of 24 ounces. It could be a total of 6 ounces. But for this purpose, we define a standard drink for people to know the risk that's associated with the amount that they're drinking. And it's pretty straightforward with beer and wine. But one area that's always been fuzzy and will continue to be is mixed drinks. So if you will indulge me just a moment, I'm going to explain to you about the standard drink. It contains 1.5 ounce of pure alcohol, which is equivalent to 1 12-ounce beer, a 5-ounce glass of wine that's 12% alcohol, or 1.5 ounces of 80 proof liquor. I believe one of the gentlemen referred to as a jigger. That's correct. So 2 drinks, with each having up to 3 ounces of distilled spirits, would be the equivalent of 4 standard drinks if the liquor used is 80 proof. There are vodkas that contain 85% alcohol, rum that contains 90% alcohol. The CDC defines excessive drinking for women to be 4 or more drinks in one occasion. And as you've heard, women appear to be particularly vulnerable to using alcohol as a coping mechanism during COVID. So what I'm getting at is that when it comes to cocktails to go, the amount of pure alcohol may vary depending on who the bartender is and what kind of liquor is being used. This is one of the many reasons distilled spirits have been treated with tighter regulatory restrictions to protect public health and safety. The misuse of alcohol is linked to a large number of harms, including motor vehicle crashes, especially if they're to go, even though we have good intent that the people will not open it up, cancer, suicide, physical assault, sexual assault, and so many more. The changes to regulations that impact availability of alcohol also put a heightened burden on law enforcement and present unique training needs and additional enforcement efforts. I appreciate retailers who have made a commitment to abide by legislation. However, I cannot ignore those who do not. According to a compliance study done by MAD Tennessee, during COVID, 37% of retailers checked sold alcohol to minors. Living in a college community and being mom to an 18-year-old, this is of particular concern to me. So in closing, I urge you to carefully consider these concerns as you consider this bill, and thank you for affording me your time.
Thank you, Ms. Bell.
Mhm.
We had a question, but it's been waived. I don't think we have any other speakers. The chair will entertain a motion. What is the pleasure of the committee? We have a motion and a second for due pass. Any further discussion?
I'd like to propose a friendly amendment simply to reduce the number of drinks from 2 to 1.
All right, we have an amendment. Is there a second to the amendment? And the motion to amend dies for lack of a second. Now we have a motion and a second to pass this out of committee with a due pass recommendation. All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. And it passes. Senator, you're on your way to rules. The chairman asked me to tell you if you'd come by up there, he will sign your form for that. I think he's in his office now.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.